Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this Friday, August 25th. We are going to be with the legendary Dale Mason today. Can't wait to get started right at the top of the hour. For those of you just joining us, welcome to the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. Enjoy this fun little slideshow of Dale's career, and we will get started right at the top of the hour. Welcome to the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. We're so excited for our passenger Dale Mason today. We will get started in about 2 minutes. Thanks so much for joining us today. Welcome to those just joining us. We are here on our 27th episode of the Spirit of the Time, and lucky enough to have Mr. Dale Mason with us today. We will get started in just 30 seconds. Welcome. to Zeitgeist Design and Production. I'm Becky Kiefer, Studio Director. Time travel is the ultimate guest experience. VR, AR, and the metaverse, is that still a thing? All pale in comparison to the notion of sailing across the seas of time and space. Here in the Zeitgeist Creative Studio, imagination rules and time is always of the essence. This is where immersion artists Ryan Harmon and Joe Cicero study the past and spin the present, envisioning the future of location-based entertainment, or what we like to call UXIRL, user experiences in real life. Now in its third year, the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast offers a sneak peek behind the themes. Each month, we move you without a ride system, inviting one incredibly talented and influential colleague aboard our time machine. We set the controls for milestone moments in that person's career and attempt to unravel the mystery of what makes a guest experience timely yet timeless. And because we're live, you can tap questions into the chat box and our passenger will answer them after the hour-long journey. Climbing aboard our time machine today is probably the most unsung hero of our modern industry, a man who is responsible for creating some of the most immersive and rule-breaking guest experiences ever imagined and realized, Mr. Dale Mason. With no prior experience in theme parks or attractions, Dale joined Universal Creative 34 years ago and immediately began designing new worlds and experiences that defied tradition. Some of the projects he led include Universal's Islands of Adventure theme park, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley, Volcano Bay, and the hub of the upcoming Epic Universe. It's now my pleasure to introduce our time machine pilots, Zeitgeist President and Chief Creative Officer, Ryan Harmon, and Zeitgeist Executive Vice President and Chief Art Director, Joe Cicero, along with the man we like to call the Tony Baxter of Universal, Dale Mason.
Hey, we're back.
Wow, that was a long trip.
That was a long trip. 16, what?
1609.
Oh my God, but so quiet. I love that celestial feeling, that
we
epic
were
design.
there with Galileo.
Galileo Figaro. Okay.
Anyway, demonstrating his first telescope.
That was pretty cool.
Venice. And of course, it reminded me of big thinking.
Yeah.
The cosmos,
creativity,
and what better comparison than with our guest Dale Mason.
Hi, Dale.
So, Dale,
hey guys.
I had the supreme pleasure of working with you for just a moment, but it was enough to get insights into your brilliance, your vision. And we'll talk more about that later when we get that point in your career.
Well, I got to work with Dale back in like 92.
Well, we are both lucky people because, as Becky said, truly one of the unsung heroes of our industry.
Absolutely.
So let's get into it because you have so much.
Yes. Time is of the essence, of course.
Yeah, so
we're going to set the time machine for 1976, Dale. You're about 17 years old, and we are at Cordova High School, and you're doing one of those ghost things on the turntable with some ceramics. What's going on here, man?
So, hi everybody. I guess everybody has an origin story, and also everybody has those people in your life that really, sort of turn a corner and move in a new direction. And when I was in high school, I actually wanted to be an oceanographer, which
wow,
and I was like the king of the tide pools, and I was also an artist, and I love to draw and do ceramics. And I was in a ceramics class one afternoon, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, why don't we go try out for the school play?" And I did, and I bombed.
Oh.
But one of the things about when community theater or school productions, if you don't make the cast, you make the tech crew backstage.
Okay.
And so one day I was watching a rehearsal, sitting in the auditorium, and I was drawing a picture. And the director came by, Jean Hauser, and she said, "Wow, that's a really nice picture." And I said, "Thanks." And the next day she came in, she walked over, and she had a stack of books. and they were books on scenic design, Japanese architecture, and she plopped them down in front of me and she said, "You know what? You're my set designer." And I'll tell you, I was hooked. Forget
Star was born.
that was that was
Wow.
How'd you do on the show? Did it come out good?
it was good. I actually did have a part in that show. I actually played the goat off stage.
That's a whole
Off
story.
stage.
So now we're in 1977. You graduated from high school.
Yeah.
And you took that experience of high school theater design, and now you're in college.
Cal State, Sacramento.
Yes, I studied scenic design there, and then moved to the Bay Area to study illustration at the Academy of Art. And I kind of got waylaid at that point. I had to make some money while I was going to school, so I went to work for a company called Flax Artist Materials. And in that company, they gave me different jobs and all that, and I ended up actually writing software for warehousing. Their mail order catalogs. And I thought,
Oh my God.
this is it. This is it. This is what it's going to be.
You spent like 7 years doing that, right?
I did.
That's a long time. Wow.
It was pretty good.
So another one of those seminal moments. Now you're living in the Bay Area, and you're asked to design an exhibit for Alameda counties.
Right.
What's it all about?
Yeah. So California State Fair, all the counties do a display, and they're judged about their products. And I was asked to do Alameda County, which was my county. And so I designed it, and lo and behold, the judge of the county exhibits was a guest judge, and it was Phil Hedema. And Phil Hedema,
Phil.
Yeah.
who does not know Phil Hedema? He is a pillar. Phil came up and he judged, and I won first place. And I got this fabulous blue ribbon, and I thought, well, this is pretty good, right? But then 2 weeks later, I got this phone call and a letter from Phil. And he said, "Hey, look, I'd like to hire you for a year." And I'm like, what? Totally, completely out of the blue. It just flabbergasted me. And he said, "Send me your portfolio," which I did. And then he called back and he said, "I'm sending you an airline ticket. Come down to see me." And so I got on a plane and I flew down to Burbank, and we walked through the shops and the studios, and he showed me the stuff, and I thought, this is amazing. I can't do this. And I went home and I said no. Said no to my dream job. And so Phil called me again, and he said, "Look, I think you're going to be really good at this job. I'm going to send you another ticket." And he did. He sent me an airline. That's right, that too. And I went down again, and we had lunch, and we talked, and I went home. I talked to my partner, and I said, "I don't think I can do this. I can't give up this great job I have at Flax Artist Materials." And I said, "No." And then a week later, I get an envelope in the mail. I open it up. There's another envelope on the inside, and scrawled on the outside of it is "last one." And inside was another airline ticket.
Oh my God.
I took the job.
Yay.
Took the job for a year, and that was what, 33 years ago. I worked for 33.
Wow. So you joined Universal's creative. Was it just called it was MCA, right? At the time.
Yes, it was MCA at the time. I came to work. I was given 4 projects that I had to complete in 4 months. And
4 projects in 4 months.
I had no idea that you could do that, but I did. It was a remake of the Western Stunt Show, a children's playground called Tin Can Alley, and a stage show based on American Tail. And then there was some strange little carnival project on the side, which I completely failed at, but didn't know I could do it. I did it. It was really an amazing time.
Wow. So you were in the Hewlett-Packard building on Lankershim. Were any of the other famous Universal lights there, or were they somewhere else?
Well, most of the people were actually in Florida working on USF. So it was a skeleton staff. There were a few people left behind to finish some projects. My office was right next to Mario Camberg, who was doing the Hanna-Barbera project. And, you know, it was great. He used to come in his red leather full outfits and rock star look.
Love you, Mario.
Yeah, love Mario. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
So that's a great example of on-the-job training and how there are so many schools now that are teaching themed entertainment, and that's great. But I think our generation of designers, we all came from different backgrounds. We just got thrown into it.
Yeah.
It was really okay, you got to figure this out.
And we were mentored.
Yeah.
There was usually, I assume, was Phil sort of your...
Oh, Phil was absolutely, you know, the best person to work for. And you know, there were so few people working that I came in at a really high level when I had absolutely no experience, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Never been a production designer or a creative director really in my life. And so I'm incredibly lucky to get in on the third floor of the ground floor, so to speak.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. So you finished those. It's 1993 now. And there's this new project called Cartoon World. And I think this is the time we met. What's going on here?
You and I worked on Cartoon World. You were there, I think, almost a year. Cartoon World was a theme park based on the Warner Brothers characters. And so, and we designed some amazing attractions with that. You were, I'm going to show you something, by the way. I found this. You worked on Martian Mayhem.
Yes.
That's a great
I wrote the narrative to that.
You did. So there was a simulator called Martian Mayhem. There was a roller coaster named, my brain is going to fry. There was a individual simulator called Yosemite Sam Rides Again. Coyote Canyon was the name.
Yeah, the roller coaster was Coyote and Roadrunner, where you went down into a teeny little hole. Yeah.
We worked on that. We loved it, and it was fantastic. And then it disappeared. The negotiations with Warner Brothers broke down, and you know, it was kind of my first project that I'd invested so much love into, and then it just
at that age, I didn't understand the concept that you work for like a year or two, and you have the drawings, and it's already, and then they're like, "What?"
I mean, I had some of those experiences, but I know where you get it. It teaches you it's the journey and not the destination.
Yes.
Along the way, you know, and like you said, you have great people you're working with. It's the day-to-day experience of going in the office, throwing the ideas around. But it sure is nice when it gets built.
Oh, yeah. And both of you have had so much built. You guys are so lucky. So 1994, I guess Matsushita is building a development in Japan, and they come to you for something. Wakayama, what is that?
Wakayama Marina City. Matsushita, which was Panasonic, owned us at the time. And they were on an island in the southern part of Japan. They were building a little community, and they needed a sort of an entertainment district. And so I did the design for it. I actually did the design for that park to sell it in a week.
Wow.
It had a Viking stunt. It was a crazy place. It had a Viking stunt show right next to a simulator ride where you went under the ocean riding whale-shaped subs called Safari. A lot of fun. I met a lot of great people on that project that I've worked with over the years. Scott Trowbridge and Catherine John, and really fabulous people. But what's really interesting about that for Steven Spielberg. And it's actually kind of an interesting story about that, is that Steven Spielberg was our sort of our creative guru overview at Universal. And we spent a couple of times a year going to him and showing him what we were working on. And so we went to see him, and I showed him some of the stuff for Wakayama. And I showed him this picture of a whale sub, and he said, "Wow, this is really nice. You know, I'm working on this project that has submarines in it." and he was talking about Sequest DSV, which was the television series that he produced. And then I showed him a picture of a dolphin that had a augmented device on the side of its head that could talk to the guest, which we were going to put in the show. And he said, well, my show has a augmented dolphin that talks. And I thought, either I'm in trouble here or he said, you know, I'm working on this project. And I'm working on this project. I want to design a restaurant in Los Angeles. And I wanted to sell gourmet submarine sandwiches and be set in a submarine. And I'm going to call it Dive. And he said, would you like to work on it? Would you like to? I'm not happy with what I'm seeing so far. Would you just go, you know, do a couple of drawings for me and come back? And Phil and I went off and we talked about it a bit and came back in a week. I had these really simple black and white drawings, didn't have enough time. And he looked it through and he went, wow. He goes, you guys are my designers. So, of course, I work for Universal. He's with Amblin. And Steven says, and today, you need to go over to Disney and show this to my partner, Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Oh.
Okay. And we stepped out of the office and Phil and I looked at each other like, we can't do that. That's Disney, right? We're Universal. That's Disney. But we did, right? We went over, met, and while we were meeting with Jeffrey, Phil's boss came into his office and said, where's Phil? And his assistant said, oh, they're over at Disney talking to Jeffrey Katzenberg. Huge explosion. I mean, it was like, what are you people doing? And you know, back and forth, it went on for a couple of weeks. We were in an awful lot of hot water. Phil will laugh at this. And then Steven went to have lunch with Sid Sheinberg. And he said, I really like these guys to do my project. And we were in. And Phil and I worked on that for a year. We had 2 jobs. And we basically, we spent 2 days a week having lunch with Spielberg and Katzenberg. He was at the time doing interior shots for Jurassic Park. That's how long ago this was. And it was really, it was a really fun, crazy place. It was kind of the first, I think, major themed restaurant to come about. This big submarine that hung out over Santa Monica Boulevard. All of the windows in it were had water tanks in them, and bubbles rose as you looked through the windows. The bar itself, you sat on torpedoes, and there was a periscope you could look through in the bar, and there was a camera mounted at the top of that olive, and you could swivel it and turn and look up and down Santa Monica Boulevard. It was probably the most expensive sub shop that was ever built, but it was marvelous. Actually, it was fun. We built a second one in Las Vegas, which I designed the facade for, and then there was a third one, which was actually built in Barcelona, which actually I never saw.
Oh, wow. So cool.
Okay, so now we're moving ahead.
1995.
And we have a very young still Dale that's given a very big assignment.
Yeah, you're talking about Islands of Adventure.
We are.
Yes.
Wow.
Amazing.
It was really a great project, and I was very young. And you know, the concept for Islands was really simple, that we were going to take all of these disparate characters, but they were all from books and stories. It was a literary park, and it was kind of a response to the fact that Universal Studios Florida was a movie park. And so really at the origin of all this, even Jurassic Park was a book before it was made. And so that kind of became the basis for what we were going to do. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun trying to get all of those people to allow us to have their IPs. Dr. Seuss, Audrey Geisel, that was a lot of fun. She initially said no. I will never put in a theme park. And we did a big concept, and we flew her out on the plane the Universal plane out to Florida, and we had this big banquet for her, and we made all this food that was Susian, and we showed her the presentation. And at the end of it all, she said, when I came in here, I would have told you that you couldn't do this. You couldn't translate. And she said, I believe her. And she signed up. It was pretty great. It's cool.
Nice. Wow.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's so many parts. There's so many parts of that park that I love, but of course, Zeus Landing is very. I love it. I mean, I love that whole aesthetic. I stole some of it and used it for Toontown, of course, even though it wasn't part of the Disney aesthetic. But I remember walking in there and just being amazed by what you guys did, because it was like the carousel couldn't just be a carousel. It was an interactive carousel. The little walkthrough was so interesting. Then the Cat in the Hat ride itself with the spinning ride vehicle, and it's like, wow, they're really telling a story here. And I got it, because in one of our other discussions with some of the other people that we've had here, they said, well, you can't really tell a story in a ride. And I kind of disagree. I think you can tell a story, and I think that attraction is a perfect example of that, for sure.
Yeah.
It's tough to do.
Is it true there's a backstory to the whole park about a child, Dale?
Yeah, there actually is, and I don't think anybody really knows it. You know, the story that we used as the basis is that a child stood on the edge of an inland sea, and was a woman, or it was a boy, it was a girl, that's lost to time. But that child took a rock and skipped it on the water, and everywhere it touched, an island grew up. And all of these characters came to live on the various islands. And Port of Entry, which is the sort of the main street that leads you up, is kind of the town that was built up that would do its basically trading with all of the other islands. And we called it the City on the Edge of Forever, or sorry, City on the Edge of Adventure was the name of.
Oh, that's great. Wow.
So what was the most challenging part of that project? And I'm probably not a fair question, because it's all a challenge, but there's usually something that stands out as, oh my gosh, and looking back like, oh, I wish we would have done this.
Well, there's always that, right? You know, there's always things that you wish you could do, or you ran out of money, or you just didn't quite get there. You know, when I look back and I think about it, and I think of Triceratops Encounter, which for very few people saw it. It was only there for a couple of years. But the idea was, in Jurassic Park, you were to visit a field hospital and watch the examination of a juvenile Triceratops named Sarah. And I have to tell you, we built the most complex animatronic for its day. I mean, phenomenal. This is a
Pete? I love it.
That's true. It did peak. But it balanced on 3 legs. It could lift one leg up and shift its weight, something that's easy for us to do, but for a robotic machine at the time, it was really, really difficult. Spar Aviation in Canada, who built the Canada arm for the space shuttle, actually did the engineering.
Wow.
Was one of the first figures in which a performer could actually stand within the motion envelope of the machine and interact. So you could stand right next to the Triceratops while it moved. It was
right.
We built eyeballs that the pupil would dilate, and we did it. It's a fascinating thing. We took a ball and we filled it with liquid. And we put a very thin layer of rubber in the middle of it, and we painted the pupil on it. And by increasing the pressure of the fluid on either side of that, it would make the rubber piece expand, and the eye would dilate. We built the voice box based on a real Triceratops, and it had bellows that were built into the ribs, and so when it moved, it actually breathed in and out. And because it was based on the real Triceratops, and we put an articulated tongue in it and all this sort of stuff, when we forced air through the system, it barked like a dog. And I thought, well, we're actually creating the real sound of what a triceratops might sound like.
Yeah.
So we built this amazing thing, and then the guests came, and they went, meh.
Oh,
Wow.
that's too
It's
bad.
nice. It's nice, but hey, I got to get to the Jurassic Park River adventure, right?
Yeah.
They were really bored. But I will say though that the kids, the young children that came through, they were mesmerized. And for years afterwards, they sent me letters that the kids had written in about, how is Sarah, right? Is she well? Is she back with the family?
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
So I reached, the project reached some of the kids.
So let's talk about a ride that never made it called Sylvester McMonkey McBeans. What was that?
Really, well, actually, the track got built.
Okay.
It's at Seuss Landing, and it was a really, really interesting ride in which it was bumper cars on an elevated rail. Each individual vehicle carried 2 passengers, and you could bump the vehicle in front of it. You could speed up and slow down, and so that track wound all the way around. And we just didn't get there. We got the development done and all of that, and then we had some issues at the end with the company Severn Lamb, which actually is out of business now. But and it was years later that we built the Seuss trolley, basically throwing away the idea of the bumper cars and doing an actual train that sort of drives through the environment.
Yeah.
But I just love the idea that you guys are pushing
I know.
bumper cars on a monorail.
That's what's awesome about
That's
you.
crazy.
Yeah, but that's what Dale does. He doesn't, you're not stuck in that stuff we learned that was drilled in our brain at Disney and stuff. You can just you just make it up, and that's what's awesome.
Wow.
So that park was mostly IP except for Lost Continent. But I think you really enjoy doing non-IP projects as well, right?
Yeah, I think I've been very lucky at Universal. I've sort of been somebody that's been given those projects. Universal is very IP focused, right? Important, find a movie, find a product, and we're so good about creating our own characters. And obviously Disney's done forever, right? And they've got the huge catalog. But I have been lucky that I have been asked always to be kind of a world builder, and Volcano Bay, Port of Entry, and of course my piece of Epic Universe,
which we'll get into later. So now it's 1999. You're comfortably situated in California, and all of a sudden they decide we're moving the company to Orlando.
That changed.
Good news or bad news?
That changed the whole industry.
The purge, as we called it. I was actually building a house in Sand Canyon, and Mark Woodbury came to me and said, "Hey, I'd like you to come to. We're closing shop here. I'd like you to come to Florida," and I did.
Wow.
And my partner and I said, "All right, we'll do it because we can get a horse ranch in Florida. We could actually afford a horse ranch." We moved the horse. And,
see, there's always a silver lining.
I was there for 19 years. So
wow. Yeah, Phil Hedema left at that time, started his own company. Craig Hanna, who was there, left, started Thinkwell. It was definitely the purge, the great purge. So what did you do? You moved to Florida, and are we in London now? It looks like you and Phil are in London and
working on a concept for the Olympics.
Yeah, what's that?
Okay.
Yeah, actually, this actually happened years earlier. We're talking about, you guys are talking about Harry Potter, and the first time Phil and I learned about Harry Potter was in London. We were there visiting a company, as you said, and we were on the tube, and there were all these people reading this book, but the book had been covered with brown paper. And so you could see the cover, right? And we were like, what is this? What is it? And we asked around, they said, oh, they're reading Harry Potter. It's this children's book, and the adults are embarrassed to read it. And so got ourselves a copy and read it, loved it. And actually over the years, tried several times to get J.K. Rowling's and then eventually Warner Brothers to look at us to develop the brand for theme parks. And Phil we even did for Warner Brothers, we did a little tiny stage show, basically, where Phil played Dumbledore, and we had birds of prey and owls and whatnot on it. And Warner Brothers said, we love it, but we're in the middle of making this movie, and so come back and see us. And it took a long time, and when we moved to Florida, it actually opened up that we would have a chance to do it again, and so I began to work on Hogsmeade. It was an interesting time because it was after 9/11, and the theme park industry was very cautious. There weren't as many people, and there wasn't a lot of money to do attractions. So they came to me and they said, all right, you need to do a Harry Potter land and you can't spend any money.
Yeah, these were dark days, right? Universal sold off property. I think there was talk that Disney might buy Universal. I mean, it wasn't doing well. And speaking of Disney, we know obviously Disney was also interested in the Potter IP.
Yeah, they were courting.
Yeah.
I understand there's a full model somewhere, which I would love to see.
I've seen it. Yeah. Tony Baxter worked on a model. They worked with Kuka on a dark ride on a Kuka arm. Very similar. Yeah. But why do you think she went with you?
Well, I do know, actually. She really looked at both of the proposals, and I think she said, look, if I go with Disney, I'm a small fish in a big pond, right? Disney's brand is enormous, and I will be second billing. And she was worried about that. And she thought, if I go with Universal, they will be, at top of the bill. And she did. And it was worth it.
So I think we're in London now, and you're living here, and you're commuting to Leavesden studio and working with Stuart Craig.
Wow,
what's going on here?
Really a great time in my life. Stuart Craig, if those of you who don't know who Stuart Craig is, he is British film royalty. He's the Academy Award-winning director of Elephant Man and Gandhi and The Mission and on. And he was the production designer on all. He is the production designer on all of the Harry Potter movies. And J.K. Rowling said there will be no theme park Harry Potter without Stuart Craig, because he has designed the world. He's the only one that knows how to do it, right? So Stuart came to visit us and look at my cheap proposal. And it's funny, we went for a walk in the park together, and I just met him, and he turned to me and he said, you have really good ideas here. What you plan to build is really good, but you Americans know nothing about British architecture. He said, look, give me a chance, give me a month. I will take this big idea that you have and all of that, and I will show you what I think this should be. And like 2 months later, I went to London, and there Stuart was with all of his art directors, and they had a very, very simple white model there of Hogsmeade, and it was brilliant, and it was clear. And so I moved to London for 5 months, a little bit longer actually, but 5 months, with Denise Imhoff, who was my art director, and we had an office right across from Stuart, and we designed that park.
Wow.
And it was a scary thing. It was very expensive, and I have to give credit to Tom Williams, who was chairman of Universal, and Mark Woodbury, who really pulled for us and defended us and put up the, this is it. This is very important to Universal. We've got to make it great. And it was good. It was good for us.
What I think was mind-blowing for us, I know for myself when I first saw it, is that it was, for the first time, total immersion. There was no Coca-Cola products. You didn't see credit card readers. There were no big emporium shops with giant open doors. There were little places with strollers stuck in there and doors you had to open. And how did you guys break all the rules?
Well, I had a co-conspirator, obviously, with Stuart Craig, and he would take me around Windsor, which is where he lives in the UK, and we would walk the back streets, and he would show me the little shops that he had used as his sort of ideas for what the shops look like in the film. And you know, we initially came in and said, boy, all this has to be big, right? You know, it's a theme park. We have to have giant retail, and we've got to have big walkways. And the more we talked to make Potter what it needed to be, we did have to break those rules. And there were lots of discussions with operations. You know, they were so sure we were just gonna kick ourselves in the tail and really mess it up, and it worked. People love the really tight spaces and the high shelving, and the retail spaces weren't big enough, and it actually caused them to want to shop more, which was kind of interesting. And we narrowed the street down. At one point in Diagon, the street comes to 14 feet when you turn the corner right before the look of the castle. And you know, theme park street should be about 30 feet wide, really. So yeah, we broke the rules. And
so I have to thank you for that, because at the time I was still at Disney, and you know, there's always been that long kind of, you know, tenuous relationship between operations and the designers, you know, and they have all the right reasons for making the decisions they make about the size of things and how many people can get through things, but often it's at odds with the design, you know, and you guys proved that, you know, if you put the design first, you know, people will come, people will react, and it can work. And that it was a game changer. It truly changed the industry, and it gave us fodder at Disney to be able to go back and fight the
They
fight.
did it.
It did definitely, Universal changed the way that we looked at projects going forward. And we knew it was going to be successful, but you know, I don't think any of us really realized it. And when in opening weeks, when the line just to get into Diagon Alley went through Lost Continent, Seuss Landing, Port of Entry, through the entryway, over the bridge and into City Walk.
Wow.
We stopped traffic on I-4.
Oh my God.
Into the park.
Wow.
So, yeah, we all felt pretty good after that.
Well, talk for a minute about the dark rides themselves, the use of the Kuka arm and
I mean, there's some, I mean, if you go, I've never been behind the scenes, but I've seen pictures, heard stories. I mean, the things you guys did, the stuff that people don't see, for many of us is as interesting as the stuff that they do get to see. So it'd be good to hear a little bit about that.
Pretty fascinating. The engineering started, actually, we also started working on a Kuka attraction with Kuka, interestingly enough, kind of in parallel. I think we were probably showing up at the Kuka factory at different times than Disney.
we got to get to that. There it is.
But we helped them redesign the vehicle so that it could hold 4. And for us, it was, instead of just putting in front of a piece of film, let's put it on a track and let's drive it through a ride building. And pretty interesting. Kukas are fascinating because, you know, most rides, the vehicle has to clear the ride envelope. Nothing can be in it as it passes through. But with a Kuka, you can actually move the arm into spaces where there's something in front of it and then pull it out of the way and move it around because of how the control system works. And 2 Kukas, you can put scenery or show action equipment on a Kuka, and because the control systems talk so well together, they can interact much closer than else. And you know, and then of course we designed that carousel system with all of the projection domes that you would plug into as you drove around, so that we could give you some great filmic moments.
Just amazing. So that opened in 2010. But around the same time, there was a big fire here at Universal Studios Hollywood, and the famous King Kong with his banana breath. So they called Dale Mason to the rescue. So why not just build another big animatronic?
Well, we were hot and heavy into film-based experiences, and so the idea, and in fact, I had worked on the concept Jaws attraction that was film-based.
Oh,
really?
Drive into a tank much earlier, but we thought, look, let's try this. Let's do a 3D film with two 90-foot long screens, right? That the tram could drive into, and that we could have this continuous action between Kong and the T-Rexes, and we could jump the tram, we could do all these sort of effects, and the battle could happen all the way around you. And of course,
wow.
we worked with Peter Jackson and Weta to produce the film. They actually made the film for us. And it was pretty spectacular. People cheered.
Yeah.
Cheered.
Mind-blowing.
So,
Yeah.
and then they took, was that same film that they took as the basis for the attractions?
2 Islands of Adventure.
Islands of Adventure.
Right.
Adding an additional Kong figure at the end and some other pieces to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. So 2011, more 3D, more film attractions, and Transformers comes about.
And I did the conceptual work on Transformers with and Phil Hedema and the Hedema group came and worked with us on that.
Oh, cool.
And then I took that project through DD design development and then passed it off because there were some other fish to fry, actually.
Yeah, Harry Potter returns this time. Diagon Alley.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was really no question that the next place we had to go was Diagon Alley. And in fact, I began thinking about it, in the middle of doing Hogsmeade. And so we started working internally. We were waiting. We knew that Stuart was going to be on board. We were waiting for him to finish one of the films, post-production on one of the films, but we couldn't wait. So my team in Florida built a white model, big 1-inch scale white model, and with all of the ideas in it that we wanted to present. And finally, Stuart was available and he came out and he said, wow, this is great. You have all the right pieces. It's going to be great. I need to work a little bit on the architecture.
Yeah.
So on that project, I lived for 9 months in Richmond.
Wow.
Which is for anybody who knows it, is actually the town where they filmed Ted Lasso. And great sweet little town, and lived there for 9 months, worked at Shepperton Studios, had a parking space in front of the soundstage next to Stuart. We had 47 motion picture art directors.
Wow.
It's the largest team I have ever worked with. And if it would be wonderful someday to publish the drawing package from Diagon Alley.
Yeah.
Because, it's out of frame. It's so big. And,
wow.
that were drawn for Diagon, and we all knew what we were doing, right? We'd been through one before, and so we were all driven to make something incredibly better, bigger, more outrageous.
Yeah.
So a lot of those old school art directors were, pen and paper artists. How much of that work was done that way versus at that point, I'm sure there was lots of CG work being done as well. So
Stuart is old school. I've watched him over the years embrace digital. For years, the Hogwarts castle model that you saw in all the films was a giant miniature, and he always worked in models. And so the designers did all draw by hand. There was very little until late in the project were we doing stuff digitally. I would build a lot of stuff in my SketchUp and show them, and then they'd build a model out of white paper, and that's kind of how he did it. And the models would get larger and larger and larger. In Diagon Alley, when we were going to wonk the buildings, Stuart, in the real place, actually built a full-size stick model, and his technicians all moved it so that in real scale for for that. But we built a 1.5-inch scale model version of it that was just wood stick frames. And then we got in and we made all the adjustments to get all the wonkiness that is Diagon.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, so my favorite part of Diagon Alley was this brilliant notion of creating a ride between two theme parks and forcing everybody to buy two tickets to ride it.
Well, actually, you bought 1 2-park ticket. Is actually
right.
It wasn't 2 tickets.
No, but that ride is, as somebody who's traveled a lot through Europe, been on the sleeper trains and the compartments, it's so realistic. The scale, the station, the car, and the effects, and I mean,
the attention to detail.
The attention to detail.
I had to build a 3/4-inch scale of King's Cross Station, it was really interesting. It was inevitable. It was the only thing we could do if you sort of think about it. We were building Diagon Alley, we were building Hogsmeade. In the books and in the stories, how do they get between the two? They take the Hogwarts Express, right?
Yeah.
The stories, and so we felt we had to do it. And in Britain and in England, rail is almost a national pastime.
Yeah.
So, of course, it was Potter, and we had to get it right. We had to get it perfect. The Hall class engine that we had to duplicate. That part of the project was done in Switzerland. Yeah, here's an interesting picture of the white of the engine. It was mostly fiberglass with aluminum and steel parts that moved down to the very detail. The cars themselves with the compartments in it. We had the model from the movie, which was just the compartment and the companionway, and there weren't very many of the real. It was based on a real train. I think there's one in up in Scotland that's still running. It's the last one. And then there's some in museums, and there was even one in a field somewhere that was just rotting. And we got permission to go out, and in the early morning we walked across this long field, climbed in through a hole in the top because the doors.
The things we do for our business.
Things we do, and we photographed, documented everything. We took samples of the mahogany. Those trains are beautifully, they were beautifully created out of mahogany and laminate. And we took pieces of the flooring. We cut a piece of the fabric, the mohair fabric, which is on all the seatings within the compartments. And we contacted the company that actually made all of the mohair for all of the trains in Britain, and tube and kind of all that, and they said, hey, we got a bolt of that original fabric in the back. It's like amazing, from that era, from that train. We've got
it. So that's actually in the train.
Well, what we did though, they sent us a sample. They cut us a sample, and we looked at it and went, oh my God, this is bright. It's new, it's fresh, and nothing in the Potter universe is new. Nothing.
No.
Everything has a patina of age. It's well worn. If it's a train, it's been hit with luggage for 30 years, and so everything is beat up. And so the fabric had faded, and so with our original sample and the basically original new sample, we picked all of those colors of fibers out. And we picked muted versions of them, and we had them manufacture new fabric. It's the kind of detail that project did. It was just everywhere in that project.
Yeah, it's just so amazing.
Very proud of that.
So 2014 comes around, and it's time to build the tallest mountain in Florida. Tell us about this.
So I tried to retire many times from Universal. Let's say I threatened to retire from Universal, and when Potter was coming to a close, and I was building a house in the Pacific Northwest, and it was kind of time, I thought maybe to step away. And Mark Woodbury held up a little shiny object, which was Universal is going to build a water park. And 8 years earlier, actually, when I was running the core team, we had done a concept for a water park. and we put it on the shelf, right? Put it on the shelf. And when Mark came to me and said, look, we're going to do it, I said, we've got it, right? So we pulled the concept off the shelf, and that's what we began working with. And I literally stepped from Potter to Volcano Bay. And
Wow.
and it was a really interesting project because Universal itself had never built a water park. These are all, this is interesting, these are all images from my SketchUp model, which I built an entire model of the park as a single file in SketchUp and carried it to show people. And that's, by the way, the two people in the foreground in that shot, that's myself, and that's my partner, Larry. And
Oh, cool. Hi, Larry.
we're in almost every model I've ever built for Universal. But it was a very difficult project because it had a amazingly compressed schedule. It had an amazingly tight budget. Universal had never built a water park. It was on a very troubling site. It was on a triangular piece of land in which on one side there was I-4, and on the other side, if you know Orlando, was Turkey Lake Road. And it was 50 acres that was in there. And on the third side, which faced into Universal's property, there was a road that cut it off from the property. And so we designed an underground tunnel that came under the road, escalators that took you up into the main plaza to get around. And it's something to think about when you're designing water parks. There is so much back of house. Pumps, filters, boilers, wave machines, all of this stuff. And in a traditional water park, you just put all of that on the perimeter of the park. We didn't have that. We did not have that space. And so we came up with a kind of a crazy idea, which was, we're building a mountain. Let's just put it all underneath. And we built, I would say, a Walmart-sized bunker building underneath the volcano.
Wow.
So that when you walk to the environment, you would never, you were never going to see any of that.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
That's so cool.
It's a funny, Disney will love this. We decided on 200 feet for the volcano for a couple of reasons. One is that at 200 feet, if you go too much higher than that, and meaning an inch or two higher than that, you have to put beacons on it for aircraft.
Oh, right.
The second reason is Everest at Disney is actually 199.5 feet.
Oh, so you beat that.
You know what? Let's do that. And it is, it is the tallest mountain in Florida.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's awesome.
And again, I applaud you guys, like with so many of the things you did, groundbreaking, everyone knows water parks, you have to wait in line to get on the slides, whatever. And I know you guys were pretty courageous about coming up with the wristband and that whole system. I know you had, some learnings from all that, but again, I applaud you for, understanding the guest experience and saying, hey, how can we make a better guest experience?
Yeah, that was probably one of the toughest research and development pieces of doing this, but it was part of the brief from the very beginning. This place, you don't want to stand in line. And so creating the wristband and the software and the monitoring and kind of all of that, and being able to tell you when you needed to go get in line was a big deal. It was very difficult, but we made it work.
You sure did.
Yeah.
So now moving forward, it sounds like once again you had this moment where you were going to retire, go to a beautiful place.
2018.
And it was at that point, I was working for a short period with the head of my group, and we were helping out developing a couple different areas in the new Epic Universe, and one of them was the Center Park. And I was there, and there were many stops and starts and many different people's hands on it, and couldn't get their arms around what that was going to be. And in walks Dale with a vision and a plan. And that's what I said earlier. I saw firsthand of what it means to have a strong, clear vision and able to communicate it to a team. And that's exactly what you did.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. Epic Universe. I started working on that. Actually, a lot of design and development had been done while I was working on Volcano Bay. But you're right, there wasn't quite the glue really would connect all of these disparate worlds and why the park should exist. And so, I mean, that's what I began to work on when I was finishing up Volcano Bay and stepped in to do that. And look, an amazing group of people. No one ever does anything alone. I have to, really give props to Adam Rivest, who's the creative producer on that. Also, Hedema Group worked, Scott Sinclair and you. I could not have done that without Scott. He was an amazing partner. And so that was a lot of work, but a lot of fun. We worked 2 years on it. It will be something. Oh, I worked 2 years on it, and then COVID came. And the project sort of folded itself, said, we're not going to do this, but we might pick it up later. So there was a year of finishing up design, and then they said, okay, we're going to wrap this up. And we all went home I'd been home for a year because of COVID, but we all left the project for another year. And then at the end of that, and things were getting better, they said, let's start this up again. And I came back onto the project. And again, Adam Rivest, amazing. And because of COVID, I knew I wasn't going to see the project all the way through to the end, that I had a set date, which I kept retiring, and I had made some promises to some folks, my partner especially, and I really needed to maintain that promise. So we went looking for somebody that could take the project on and carry it on and finish it up. And that's Catherine John. If you don't know Catherine John, you should know Catherine John. She should be doing one of these. She is amazing.
Another hero.
Yeah. Okay. With her forever and a day. She's worked for Disney. Anyway, she is the perfect person with the sensitivity to bring our piece of it. I won't say our piece of it. Probably, I say my because it's probably the most personal piece of design I've ever done. So incredibly proud of it. It is going to break a few norms. I like that.
Again.
Of course, we would expect that.
We expect nothing else from you, Dave.
It will be astronomical.
Oh, good
word. And I know some of the things there, and I'm biting my tongue. I'd love for you to be able to talk about it, but people will be amazed.
Yeah. So what are you doing now, Dale? You're up in the Pacific Northwest. Are you writing a book? Are you?
No.
What are you doing?
My house is finished. My house is finished. I'm sort of enjoying. I've spent my life. It's kind of weird saying. I've said this before. I spent my life racing with the sun. Right. There's been a project after project after project, and literally, I was starting another one before one was finished. And I built this house in the Pacific Northwest for me and my partner, and it's where the sun sets. Right.
Oh, perfect.
It's on a cliff, 280 feet above the water, and we watch the sunsets every night, and it is heaven. It is heaven.
Wow.
I'm not done. I'm not retired. I'm on sabbatical, but I'm getting recharged.
Yes.
There you go. Sounds like the perfect place for me.
Yes. So in all your work, you've developed some philosophies about this industry. I think a lot of it has to do with the guests. Tell us about that.
Yeah, never underestimate our guests. In our business, a lot of times we're told that guest doesn't care, doesn't understand it, doesn't see the detail. Why are you spending so much time and energy? You could do something much simpler, much cheaper. And I think that's hogwash. I think how I look at it is I design for the guest that really wants to be taken on an adventure, right? Mm-hmm. And so to make that adventure complete, you have to really complete the idea. And everything that you design, everything that you put into has got to serve that story, right? It's got to, whether it's the audio, the soundtrack, the architecture, it's the curvature of a walkway, the shape of a wind. I mean, everything should reinforce the story you're trying to tell. And I think about a lot of our guests sometimes don't understand what we're doing. You know, they don't quite get the nuance. But the thing is, if we design it right, if we, you know, dot our I's and cross our T's and make every element serve that story, they intuitively get it. They know it. They may not know what it is, but they know it's right. And they're along for the ride, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
So I think Dale just answered our question. What makes an experience timeless?
Yeah, timeless. Is that what you would say? Is that like, is it that level of detail?
I do think it is. And it's, by the way, it's more than detail, it's the proper detail. It's never put anything into a project that does not reinforce the story. So, you know, there should be no superfluous design. It can be complete, it can be deep, it can be rich, but don't draw anything or add anything to a project that doesn't further the story.
Yeah.
So I look at it.
I think those are great words.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And wow, Dale, what again, another master class by a master.
Yes, thank you, Dale.
So much.
I say we go off to the opening of the Epic Universe and see. I want to see this. I want to see this lab. Yes, yes. Let's go to the future. All right.
We'll promise to keep it.
Yeah, put your goggles on, Dale. Let's all go to the future.
Let's
All
go.
right, we're going to 2025. Everybody, it was great to see everybody. Dale, thank you so much.
Thank you
Take
so much.
care. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys. We hope you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much to our friend Dale Mason for traveling with us today. And if you have questions for Dale, stick around for our live Q&A in just 60 seconds. On behalf of Zeitgeist Design and Production, we thank you for spending an hour of your time with us on the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. If you enjoyed the journey, please check out all 27 of our time travel adventures on our YouTube channel or under the Zoomcast section at zeitgeist-usa.com. They're also available as a podcast wherever you listen. Set your clocks now for Friday, September 22nd, when our time travel passenger will be the founder and namesake of Cincinnati's legendary Jack Rouse Associates, Mr. Jack Rouse himself. Until then, may your tomorrow have the nostalgia of the past, the wonder of the present, and the promise of the future.
Get it?